Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking time this morning. My name is William. I lead the Cybersecurity Strategy Labs and Solutions Group in Bank of Montreal. I will be talking about a framework called BICT. This is a framework that our bank uses for our cybersecurity strategy and planning exercises. It's a framework that was developed by my boss, the global CISO of BMO. His name is Aman. And from what I know, a little more than 24 organizations have adopted this framework. So let's get going with our presentation. So BICT, the B stands for business alignment, I stands for industry benchmark, C is for compliance obligation, and T is for threat management. We live in this information age. There is that abundance of information, more information than we can digest probably. My strategy team that is responsible for strategy and planning exercises, we subscribe to a whole bunch of advisory services. As a result of which they consume and read a lot of research material. Steve is nodding, he says Gartner is one of them. We, like any other organization, talk to a lot of vendors, which is a good thing. But in the name of next-gen artificial intelligence and machine learning, a lot is being offered these days. And then the good part is that we belong to the information security community. The way we work is very different from marketing professionals, and for the right reason. So we understand that exchanging information is for our own good. But when you're talking about spending and investing millions of dollars, and when your organization is banking on you for providing assurance, your strategy and planning exercise has to be a lot more than what I just described. And that's where BICT kicks in. From what I know, it is one of the few, if not the only one, that provides objectivity into that conversation. So my presentation today is going to be divided into 3 phases. In the first phase, I'm going to show how you can leverage BICT to do the current state, future state assessment, and hence come out with your security requirements. In the second stage, I will be using Gartner's toolkit called Adaptive Security Architecture to strike a balance and to shorten that wish list. And in the final stage, I'll be using the BICT toolkit to again prioritize your initiatives. So, current state. You know, about 10 years ago, when I was attending security conferences, it almost became a fashion, right from the keynote to the end note. And a lot of wise people with a lot of experience would talk about align your security with business. And a lot of abstract explanation would come out of it. Initially, I struggled with some of that. But this is my interpretation of what you mean by aligning your security with business. It's about understanding what are the key business initiatives that your organization is driving today. It's also about understanding what are the crown jewels of your organization that you've got to protect. By crown jewels, it could be applications, it could be portions of your infrastructure, it could be portions of your data. And then it's also about understanding what are those key initiatives that your business or organization is banking on for its success in future. What are those forward-leaning business initiatives? And what I tell my strategy teams is, guys, get those lists, then understand what is that solution architecture and technology architecture that is supporting that business model. And once you understand the technology ecosystem, then do a little bit of threat modeling and understand what portions of that technology ecosystem are we able to support well, and where are the opportunities for us to consolidate or improve. So let me give you an example. It's a no-brainer that all organizations are going through digitalization drive, right? So what does our digital initiative typically looks like? Obviously, there's going to be a web-based commerce, so there's going to be a website. Chances are you're going to collaborate with a whole bunch of third parties and business partners. There's a fair chance that some portion of your information will be stored in cloud, some portion will be stored in your data center, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a mobile app that is coming as a part of that initiative. And of course, we live in an era of advanced analytics. So there's going to be business intelligence, there's going to be MDM, master data management, and these days a lot is being leveraged from big data as well. So these are, at 10,000 feet altitude, this is your technology ecosystem that is supporting that one business initiative or digitalization drive. So what I tell my team is, now try to understand that ecosystem, get the details of it, understand how the information is flowing, and then see as if, with all that we have got in place, how well are we able to support that business model? And then where are the opportunities for us for improvement? Next is industry benchmark. So every organization goes through this maturity assessment exercise every year. We do that, and we do that multiple times. You have maturity assessment against NIST, ISO, PCI, DSS. Advisory firms have got their own framework. Gartner has got their IT score, right? And when you come out with that maturity assessment exercise, you will find that in some areas you are doing better than the industry average or the Fortune 100, 500. In some areas you are at par with them, and in some areas there are opportunities for improvement. And that is what you try to find out. Where are the opportunities for improvement? And those improvement opportunities get translated into solutions or opportunities for improvement in processes, which becomes your requirements. The third area is compliance obligations. Now, someone, few years ago in one of these platforms said compliance is checklist and checklist does not translate to security. I disagree with that. It's all about your intention. If you want to do things in the right way and in the right spirit, that compliance gets a lot of ground covered. It accelerates the whole process of at least implementing the basic security and some of the advanced security controls. And regulators are getting smarter. They are obviously asking you the obvious questions on endpoint, perimeter, network, and all that. But now they are asking you about mobile, cloud, big data, all that good stuff. So again, if an auditor from outside or within your organization can find a gap in your security program, that's a blatant, visible gap right out there, and a good opportunity for you for improvement. So translate that gap into a solution or an improvement process, and that becomes one of your, again, security requirements. And finally, threat management. It's not about looking at 30,000 threats that originated 20 years ago till now. It's about understanding what are the latest and greatest adversaries that your organization is fighting today. So for me, it's having a conversation with my CSOC and IT ops teams and figuring out two things. What are the threat vectors that we are trying to deal with today, okay? And B, there's a chance that there could be 10 different threat vectors. Out of those 10, we might be performing well against 8 or 9 of them. So what are those 1 or 2 threat vectors where we are taking the beatings, where things are getting compromised, where there is opportunity for improvement? And again, translate those improvement opportunities into solutions and processes for your future planning exercises. Now, the interesting thing about threat management is that conversation is never over. You just don't talk to your CSOC and IT ops once a year. It's a continuous conversation. Threats keep evolving, threat vectors keep evolving, and so it's about keeping an eye on that evolution, and understanding how can we align ourselves tactically or strategically while things are changing on the horizon. So you did your current state assessment. Let's talk about future. I talked about business alignment, and in your organization, cloud, mobile, big data, advanced analytics, these are going to dominate the next few years. That's a no-brainer. We all know that. And we need to protect that. But it's interesting to understand some of the business trends that might not be so obvious. Let me give you some examples. So one way we figure out, what are those key strategic business initiatives is by, understanding certain attributes, and one of the attribute is what is the budget of that business initiative. And when you look at big, massive enterprise class business initiative, they have a threshold of, say, let's say for an example, $10 million. You won't find Internet of Things coming in that kind of threshold. The initiatives that involve Internet of Things will always be under that threshold or under the radar. But that's an interesting trend. When you hear about Internet of Things, the obvious things that come in your mind is utility companies, power grids, healthcare, but it's interesting to see how much IoT is being involved in other verticals as well. For example, financial vertical. The obvious examples are heating and air conditioning system, your security monitoring system, your smart communication and collaboration, your smart building maintenance. But I'll give you an interesting example. So financial sector is using Alexa as a customer interface. That's a unique example of a pure consumer-based IoT that is already being deployed. So that's one thing that my strategy team is looking as to how we can address the IoT. IoT is a very disparate space. There is no standardization of operating system. The memory processors that are used in some of those consumer devices are not the same quality as your notebook. It's a different game altogether. Another interesting trend is APIs. Now, when you're talking about data lakes, big data, integrating big data with your BI, you are talking about thousands of APIs just alone in that space itself. On top of that, if you have been hearing some of the sessions, we are heading towards an era of micro everything. Micro segmentation in your software-defined network, microservices for your applications. I talked about digital initiative and collaborating with 10 different parties. You're talking about exchanging information, and that is being done through APIs. API is a security myth. The first myth is firewall. Firewall, if it is not a next-gen firewall and if you're not leveraging all the modules of a next-generation firewall, essentially it's an access control list. The second myth is encryption. If your credentials get compromised, then encryption or no encryption, it doesn't matter. And the third one is API. I've been into security conversations where a security professional will ask someone, how is the information being exchanged? And someone will reply through APIs. And people will say, that's good. API is just a piece of code. How that is exchanging information, how secure or unsecure or mature that code is, you can only figure out once you test it. The important thing is your application security solutions are not capable enough of testing APIs. So that's another trend that my strategy team is looking at. One final example that I like to give is robotics and automation. That's a reality that's happening today. It's happening in financial institutions, it's happening everywhere. Obviously, the drivers are cost saving and efficiency. Now again, it's important to understand that robotics and automation, if you really dumb it down, it's a script. How you protect that script, how you manage your privilege account management will determine if that script is doing its job or it's being exploited to do something else. So one part is look at the future, understand the business trends. Some of these trends might not be obvious. And finally, for whatever you come out with, there's always going to be constraints when it comes to money, staff, but assuming that you've got a stellar team and assuming that you've got a blank check from your board members, time will always be a constraint because there's only so much change that your organization can absorb in a given amount of time. And finally, this layer is not something that you have to spend or your teams have to spend months together, but it's something that it's nice to keep in the back of your mind. The first in the shift in the business model. The shift in the retail media sector is pretty obvious. It's happening. But it's interesting to see there is a shift happening in financial, in other verticals as well. The second is economic disruption. When things are going well, we all know that there's a happy feeling that the party is never going to stop. It happened in year 2000. It happened in 2008. I don't know when it happens again. But when it happens, your budget will be slashed by 20, 25, 30%. I don't know what that number is. But it's important to understand that if your budget gets slashed, then how are you going to get pretty much the same job done with that reduced funding? Industry disruption. So I was listening to one of the talks here, and one of the top executives asked this question. Someone asked him, what is it that you are scared of? What is it that you're afraid of? And he said, I'm afraid of that unknown that I've not seen right now. I know my competition today. I know the magic quadrant that is being churned every year. I can deal with that competition. There's a game plan for that. What I don't know is what is that next wave of Airbnb and Uber and Amazon that is going to disrupt my business. There are some interesting things happening in the financial sector. Some of these Facebooks and Amazons are sponsoring the startups. How that is going to evolve the business, it's anybody's guess. But it's a good idea to understand what those disruptors could be. And if that is going to be an emerging model, then how are we going to evolve along with our business and our technology as security professionals? And finally, global disruption. Now, I have to admit, I do watch one of those zombie movies every year. My favorite one is Warm Bodies. But I'm the last person who would go in front of the board or executive and present that end of the world situation to get some budget or funding, okay? But realistically, do you think it is possible that the #1 cloud provider in the world is out of action for 48 hours? Can it happen?
Absolutely.
Do you think it's possible that internet gets disrupted in certain part of the world for 6 or 8 hours? So these are, again, few things. When it happens, it's untested. Nobody has got a concrete game plan. And it would be nice to at least get prepared at some level at this point. Right? So you got your security requirements through 4 different channels of BICT. You looked at your business initiatives today and tomorrow, and based on that, you came up with some requirements. You looked at areas where there is opportunity for improvement when you're comparing yourself with industry average or the best of the industry. You look at the compliance or regulatory findings or self-identified issues within your risk register, and based on that, you came up with some improvement measures. And finally, the threat management. And all this got translated into security solutions, opportunity for fine-tuning your processes, and then you look at products, what is out there. And when finally your teams are going to come back to you, which happens every year, it's a no-brainer that that list is going to be way, way longer than what you can realistically digest in a given financial year. So the question is, what do we implement in next financial year, and what do we delay for the following year? And that's where the stage 2 and 3 comes into picture. This is a concept derived from the adaptive security architecture, which is one of Gartner's concept. So when my endpoint security team or network security team, they come out with their 24 initiatives, I tell them this. I tell them, guys, first map your existing initiatives that we have got in place with one color across these 4 quadrants. And the 4 quadrants are preventive, detective, responsive, and predictive. Any security solution or product can be classified into these 4 quadrants. What is interesting is that traditionally, if you've noticed, preventive quadrant has been dominating. Stop everything. Let's prevent everything. Signatures. With the advancement in AI, advanced analytics, machine learning, all the good stuff that we have been hearing since last two days, The detective, responsive, and predictive quadrants are now emerging. They are reaching that stage of maturity. So once the existing mapping is done, then I tell the teams, now map your wish list with a different set of color, in this case orange. And I tell them, guys, let's balance it out against these 4 quadrants. Let's not again go heavy on the preventive. Now don't get me wrong, if there is a new solution in the preventive quadrant that is a game changer, that can replace an existing inefficient solution, or that can really address a new requirement, by all means we are going to go for it. But again, we want to balance things around. And doing this exercise brings down that wish list to a certain number. Okay, so we have got a reduced wish list with us now. But still, we need to understand that if we have 40 initiatives going on in the next financial year, what are the top 5, 10 initiatives that are really important, that has to go as per the execution plan, where we cannot tolerate any delay, where we cannot tolerate any change in differences in quality. And that's where the toolkit from BICT kicks in. So what this toolkit is, obviously I've not shared the toolkit. I'll be happy to talk to you later on. But what we have done is we assign a score against these 4 different quadrants. So let's say I've got a new initiative, okay, CASB. I evaluate CASB and I see what kind of business value is it giving. If it's providing a lot of business value, then CASB scores maximum points. If it is not, then it scores 0 or whatever, low points. Then I evaluate the same initiative against industry benchmark. Is it going to help us be with the best of the best in certain areas where we are lacking? If so, then we get maximum points in industry benchmark. If not, it scores low point. So let me give you a demo as to how, what are the attributes that gives points to an initiative. Let's start with business alignment. So if you have a security initiative that is going to generate revenue, or it's going to reduce cost, or it's going to increase user experience or efficiency, then it scores maximum points. One interesting example is single sign-on. You implement single sign-on, user experience gets taken care of, efficiency and cost cutting gets taken care of, because you get rid of those 24 entitlement processes and approvals that goes on in your organization. And it's a win-win situation for a lot of people. Another interesting example is your credit card industry. So with all the breaches happening in and around, did you ever wonder why your credit card provider doesn't tell you use 10-digit PIN or use a complex password every time you are using your credit card? That's because of user experience. But at the same time, when you get a call from your credit card provider or from bank that your card has been blocked because there was an anomaly detected, even though it's an inconvenience, it gives you a lot of assurance. And that's a perfect example that prevention is not everything, it's also about detection. One final example I would like to give in this area is adaptive access control, which is under normal circumstances, it's only one level of authentication, but as soon as there is an anomaly or a change, you are moved to a 2-factor. Industry benchmark. So, I gave you some examples. You get the maturity assessment exercise done against NIST, ISO, PCI. If it is specific to a security domain like application security, maybe based BSIM. If you are working with an advisory firm, maybe IT score from Gartner. And you obviously know your candidates. I'm weak in this area and I need improvement in this area, and you put your efforts there. Then there are benchmarking that are being done in some other areas. For example, budget. What is my security budget? What percentage of IT budget is security budget? And again, that information gets shared by Gartner and a number of other advisory firms. Another interesting number is staff, organization structure. again, a popular number that is out there for you where you can compare yourself with hundreds of organizations. But what I'm trying to do this year is getting into some of the niche areas. One example is I want to understand how agile are we in executing the security initiatives. And the rationale is, so we are talking about digitalization, we are talking about DevOps, we are talking about release cycles that are happening every 2 weeks or 1 week. If I'm going to take 3 months to get all the approvals and another 3 months to get my security initiative start getting executed, somewhere I'm not aligned with that digitalization drive. When you are benchmarking yourself in these niche areas, obviously you don't have data available from hundreds of organizations, but even if you can compare yourself with the best of 5 or 10 in the world, that's a good start. Compliance obligation, simple. If I can address a major audit finding, or even if I can look into my risk register, and if there is a self-identified issue for improvement, and if I can address that, you score points against it. If by doing so, you're also increasing user experience, you're also saving money, you're also you're providing business value, then that gets top points. And finally, threat management. So we all grew up in information security thinking that it's about CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Welcome to the world of Internet of Things. Welcome to the world that you won't be able to stop everything. And the fact, now you have your users or consumers who are pretty much educated and informed. The modern security is also about safety, the fact that you have IoT, and you need to provide assurance against that. It's about resilience. It's not just about stopping everything, it's also about detecting, responding, and rebounding back from that. And finally, it's about privacy. It's about, I'm going to implement DLP, I'm going to do CASB, I'm going to implement all the monitoring system that's in place, UEBA, SIM, everything. But I'm going to do it in such a way that I'm respecting the privacy rights of my consumers and my users. So again, threat management, if there is something that is looming out there, if there is an adversary, whether you come out with a tactical or a strategic, that takes the precedence over anything else and gets top marks right away. So these are some of the examples where I've mapped, initiatives against those 4 quadrants. You guys are welcome to write me, connect me over LinkedIn. This is public information. I'll be happy to share it with you. This is an example how that BICT toolkit scoring takes place. What I've not done here is you don't see the scores below those 4 quadrants, but essentially what we do is we pick an initiative, DevSecOps, and then we try to assign some bullet points against those 4 quadrants. How DevSecOps is providing business value, how is it helping us be with the best of the best in the industry, how is it addressing some of the regulatory obligations, and so on. And based on those bullet points or the weightage, then the points are awarded. In the end, those points are added. And in the end, if I have 60, 70 initiatives in my wish list, my team sorts those initiatives out based on the points, and the top 30, 40 make the cut for that particular financial year. Now, what you have to understand is this is just a toolkit. It is giving you an opportunity to bring objectivity into this conversation. It's giving you an opportunity to say, okay, I know that, but I'm still going to put everything on a piece of paper and I'm going to analyze that. By no means this is a bulletproof system. At the end of the day, it's a combination of subjectivity and objectivity. It's about combining everything when you are doing your planning or strategy exercises. This is another example, for cloud security initiative, how the bullet points are assigned, and again, you don't see the scores, but then eventually my team would assign the score below that. Questions?
Lots.
Go ahead.
So after you finish a project or the project is considered completed, do you go back and remeasure what the project brought to the table versus what you originally thought was in the scorecard?
That's a good point. No, we don't let the project complete. So one of the criteria is if a project makes the cut to get initiated in a given financial year, the first thing we need to do is define the success criteria right away. The success criteria and I know that a lot of that cannot be validated during POC, but it continues to flow from POC to pilot all the way to the enterprise rollout. At some point, if there is a misalignment in that success criteria, for example, if it's in early stage of POC or validation of the solution, then that's a good indicator that we need to rethink and go back to the drawing board.
And you keep it the historical data? Is there like a historical data of the projects that you achieved over the years?
Yes, yes. And this exercise is not just about one time. Obviously, a full-blown effort is done every year with all the project sponsors, but in between, we again do this exercise as and when funds are being released or there is a new opportunity to do something else. In the threat management area, like I said, it's not a one-time thing. It's something that you keep an eye on all the time. And if there is something really changing, there are trends or indicators that are telling us to do something different. I won't say that we again spend a month in doing this exercise because it's threat. We need to be responsive. But again, all the information and exercise that was done and all the stuff that we have from the historical conversations, that is useful in addressing what we are trying to do.
Interesting.
Yes, please.
I think it's great to see the kind of structure around the planning for your strategy and prioritization. Compared to how you've done it before, do you see, what are the big differences during the exercise compared to how you did it before? Do you find it to be more agile, or does it just provide you guidance as you walk through it in a structured approach? What are all the benefits for you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It has brought focus into the conversation. It has brought one approach where everybody has got the buy-in, all the project sponsors, and everybody understands it's not about my initiative versus your initiative and what got approved. It's about understanding we are all sitting under the same roof. We are all looking at one framework. And if I come up with my 10 wish list and you are coming up with your 10 wish list, it's not about us doing that BICT in isolation. It's about we do BICT with that central team, which is a strategy team, and then we are all sitting together and we are having that conversation. You are very welcome to challenge me and say, deception technology, why do you think that you scored 10 points, or why do you think you provided weightage in certain different area? Yeah. You are very welcome to professionally disagree with me. But at the end of the day, when people leave that conversation, everyone is sort of having one opinion that we did our best, and these are the 30, 40 initiatives that is right for us this year. So it brought speed into that conversation, it brought focus, it brought that one set of approach. It obviously took away a bit of emotions and subjectivity. You attend Gartner conference, go back and say, holy smoke, I attended that session, and you know what, it can do this, it can do this, it can provide all the alert. It's a good opportunity to listen to that and then go through that and understand, let's validate what was said, what part of that was really true.
So that structure because it was structured, there was agility just by the fact that you knew what you were doing, how you're going to do
That's
it.
right.
You weren't mired in debate on certain things for too long, right?
Not for too long,
Yeah.
That's right.
Sorry. I was just the other thing, just to add on to that, the other thing that I've heard from you and from Anna is inside the team, kind of building out what you're saying, there's a sense of process fairness, that has helped, I think, create. And then if I understand correctly, this has also been very effective with your external audiences in the process of justifying the budget, and in some cases even securing additional funding beyond what we receive. So the process maturity of what you've done is very well received, I think, by other audiences across the business who perhaps are not as sophisticated as this or as thorough as this process is. So
that's an excellent point. So things get approved, and then the project starts getting executed. And then there is obviously project oversight that's happening. There are all sorts of steering committee and leadership reporting. When something is being reported red, orange, or green, this score and the gravity that comes along with that score provides that context to some of the leadership teams, why these guys are saying something is bright red. Why are they losing their sleep if something is getting delayed by 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
So I guess my curiosity is, as security professionals, I'm sure we're all fantastic at understanding what the business wants. How often does the business actually involve in the business alignment conversation?
So I'll give you 2 examples how we achieve that. Prior to one amazing thing that the bank has done, and I'll give you that example, the way we were doing that was I was having a good relationship with my financial counterpart. We came out with a certain attributes, and we gave him those attributes and said, please pull out the projects that have got these attributes. There could be these, and some of these attributes is one line of business banking on that enterprise class for that line of business? Is it beyond that line of business? Is it truly enterprise class? Is it above a certain budget threshold? What kind of involvement in this? What kind of interfaces it is going to have? Those attributes. And then, at the end of the day, when he's going to pull something out of the database or financial database, obviously you need to fine tune and eliminate something and include something in your business as your key business drivers. But what we have done, and I think a lot of organizations should do, is once a year we have this event. It's a day-long event, and representatives from all lines of business, all engineering and technology groups, including information security, we all gather under one roof. And everybody comes with their top 10 of that year. So first, everybody presents their top 10. They give a brief overview of what that top 10 initiative is and what kind of collaboration they are looking from engineering, technology, security, and all perhaps from other lines of businesses as well. But that's an amazing platform for me to understand, okay, capital market, that is what is important for them. Wealth management, these are the 10 things. Now let's go deep into that and try to understand what they are trying to achieve. Is there an opportunity for us to get prepared now, considering that they are going to drive this initiative 6 months from now?
Sometimes what you see is like a strategy, being like a strategy document. And then the exercise, a lot of the stuff that you went through, you're talking about business priorities, and you go into initiatives and products, and at the end you're talking about, like I said, products, right? This seems like more of a little bit of both together. Is that right? Where you kind of got your strategy, then it directly turns into the things you're doing, and then all the way down to budget and products, right? Is that? That's right.
The product is the final thing. I tell my teams, guys, when you have those gaps or areas of opportunities of improvement, stay away from products. For a while, forget about IBMs and Cisco's and Veracodes of the world. Just translate those gaps into what is the gap, what kind of solution or improvement in process do you need? We will have the product conversation later on.
So
but eventually it does happen.
So is this tied to an annual cycle that you do this?
Annual full blown,
yeah.
But it happens in between, especially when we have to reprioritize certain things. The real reality is there could be budget cuts.
Yeah.
Funds could be surrendered into something else.
You do it again.
Or so there is additional funds available, so it happens again and again.
And then does the strategy redefined every year?
Yes, so it's sort of a process that you have to continuously keep an eye, understand how things are changing, not just with the business, with the threat, with some of our regulatory findings and everything, and obviously things, the priorities and all that, they keep changing. Hi.
Maybe from sort of a broader perspective, but what's the measurable output of your process? Obviously, there's folks getting presentations or summaries, but is there a report? How are you kind of looping back with stakeholders to kind of take all this effort and make it more concrete?
I think it is really providing that transparency. right? Not just for your internal stakeholders within your security and risk management team, but even beyond that. Like Steve mentioned, when you're talking to technology folks or business folks to get their support in trying to do what you do, you are able to demonstrate, hey, I really need your 10 people in this initiative for 200 hours because I'm trying to do something, and this is the gravity of that.
And, I'm sorry, Glenn, do you have a summary output from the process
Yes,
that
we
you
do.
use?
Yes.
Okay, and what does that look like?
It looks like initiative, brief description in an sort of Excel spreadsheet, how it's scored in the 4 quadrants, what is the final score, what would be the success criteria, what is the duration, stuff
So
like
it's really a
that.
working document as
That's
much
correct.
as it is sort of a formal report or a marketing brochure for strategy. It's really a working document.
That's correct.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other question? Okay, thanks everyone. Appreciate your time.